morning, morning, morning. Good morning. Good morning to you.
Let's go right ahead and welcome at this time as we talk HR with HRMAB, Nicholas Roberts, who is the Vice President of HRMAB, and welcome back Joan Underwood, who is the President of the organization, also a professional coach, talent development specialist, author, etc., etc. Good morning.
Morning, teacher.
Hey, good morning.
Good to have both of you with us. And today we're looking at whether your HR is truly a strategic partner in your organization. So, a good place to start is talking about what it means to be a strategic partner, Joan.
So, if you're a strategic business partner, you are in the room when decisions are being made about the organization's vision, mission, strategy, and strategic objectives. If you're not, someone is going to come out of the room where the decision was made and tell you about it, and then tell you that you are required to support the implementation or the execution of those decisions. So, for HR to be a strategic business partner, to get into that room where the decisions are being made, we need to bring certain skills and competencies to the table. First of all, we need to understand the business model. How is it that the organization makes money? If it's a for profit organization, a government ministry, what exactly is the mandate? How does the organization contribute towards the realization of the national agenda? No, it's not either or. It's both the need to be strategic and the need to be operational. But if all that we're bringing to the table is the operational capacity in HR, then we do not contribute to the decision making. So let me give you a few examples of the strategic execution versus the operational execution. So, for example, recruitment and selection is something that needs to happen within any organization. At the strategic level, HR would be involved in workforce planning. So, having made and contributed to the making of decisions about the vision, the mission, the strategic objectives, strategic HR as a business partner then says, what are the skills and abilities that we need in order to execute this strategy? Need quantitatively and qualitatively. So how many people we need and what competencies do they need to bring to the table over what period of time? That's the strategic orientation. At the operational level now, we are advertising for an individual job. We're going through the interview and other selection process, onboarding, etc. Another example, if we look at compensation, as a strategic business partner, HR will be involved in setting the compensation philosophy for the organization. Are we going to lead the market in terms of our compensation? Are we going to match the market or are we going to lag behind the market? And for each of those decisions, there must be a rationale. So when the decisions are made, HR is in the room explaining the pros and cons of each compensation philosophy and how it would align with the organization's overall vision and mission.
And speaking of the organization's overall vision and mission, why is it important for organizations to prioritize ensuring that their HR department is truly a strategic goal? And you can take that one for us, Nicholas.
Hi, good morning, teacher. Thanks for that. So, as Joe mentioned, if it is that there's no alignment between the HR department or the HR function and the organization, there's going to be misalignment in between, or between rather, the department and the HR function and the organization. So, with that being said, as Joan mentioned, as opposed to HR guiding or advising or leading how it is the people strategy should be rolled out or administered, it is going to be done by people who generally have, for instance, a numbers or operational standpoint or viewpoint of HR. And unfortunately, they do not take sometimes the people aspect into play. So, as Joan mentioned, if you look at compensation, if you look at recruitment and selection, if someone that does not have an HR mindset is leading a HR function or having it or looking at it from that viewpoint, then you're going to see, for instance, you're going to have low employee engagement, low employee morale. You're going to see a disconnect between employees and the organization, and you're going to see people coming into the organization who do not necessarily align with the values of the organization. And I think organizations only see the disadvantage of this when the turnover rate of an organization is high. So, for instance, you see people leaving an organization at an inordinate rate or a very high rate. You want to know why is this happening, and it's because you do not have someone leading your HR function or a HR practitioner advising your organization who is guiding you, letting you know, well, your people and your organizational strategy are not in alignment.
That's all very interesting. But Joan, based on your experience, how do you think, first of all, business leaders and then staff view HR? Joan, I
It's
think
not
you're
easy
muted.
for us to.
Okay.
All right. As I was saying, it's not easy for us as HR practitioners to admit it, but it's a reality that we are not perceived by our colleagues within the organization, for the most part, as being sufficiently strategic. They see us as being more administrative or operational. And we need to own that. Okay. We need to make a compelling case to get that seat at the table to be more strategic. And one of the ways in which we can do that is to show up as having the business savvy, the business acumen to understand the decisions that are made at the macro level and not just as it relates to the operationalization of the typical HR functions. So, how do we do that? Again, it's about adding value. So, yes, the language of business is accounting. That's the bottom line. That's what they talk about in the C-suite in terms of how are we going to execute in order for us to be able to remain financially viable, to have either maintain or augment our market share. These are the conversations that are being held there. And so we need to be able to not just understand that language, but to speak that language as well. So we need to be able to talk about HR matters, the people matters, impacts critical business outcomes. So, for example, Nicholas would have mentioned high turnover rate. Now, if as an HR practitioner, I want to have a conversation with the other folks around that C-suite table, I can't just say, we're having too much turnover. I need to be able to quantify how that is impacting our bottom line. I need to be able to qualify how it's impacting our customer service, because those are the variables that businesses monitor. So this is the cost of having to go back to recruitment as often as we're doing. This is the cost of having to onboard again when we just hired someone. This is the lost productivity while we wait for that new employee to get up to speed, as opposed to saying we had 15% turnover. That doesn't mean as much to the other folks in the organization as it means to HR people. So the onus is on us to translate our concerns, to translate what we are seeing into the language of business so that it is more impactful.
Nicholas, how important is it for us to bring regular staff members along on this journey to get business leaders on board, so to speak, with looking at HR as a strategic partner? And how do you do that? Because there's still a lot of people out here in general staff who aren't necessarily sure that HR, the HR department is fully there for them. And that's based on some of what I've experienced and seen myself.
So you're correct, Tisha. So HR unfortunately suffers from the dichotomy that business leaders generally think that HR is for staff, and staff generally thinks that HR is for the business. HR should be the linchpin or operating in between what is happening in between the needs of the business and the needs of the employee. With that being said, I think it is that HR needs to understand what is their function, what it is that they are there to do, or unfortunately, they will be reduced to organizing picnics and putting on shows or whatever the case may be. And that is no longer the case or the mandate or function of HR. So HR, first of all, needs to understand what is our strategic imperative as HR practitioners. With that being said, change management is very important and having a communications plan. Because when HR understands what is its role and what is its strategic role within the organization, only then can it communicate it with a level of confidence and authority throughout and within the organization so that it can gain buy-in. Because if we as HR practitioners do not believe what we're saying, then we cannot gain the buy-in from our business leaders, and then by extension, we cannot gain the buy-in from our staff. So once it is HR understands the strategic mandate, so as Joan mentioned, like I said, things of like compensation once again, recruitment and selection, how are you going to break those down into simple terms to the normal employee to understand to them, well, okay, if it is that you don't get a colleague that can do the job, that can work with you, that can assist you in getting the job done, or if it is that we don't inform IT about what tools are needed for our people, for our staff, then it is going to result in poor customer service. We need to be communicating these things in ways that the business and that employees understand. So change management, communication is very important for HR practitioners.
I know it's now called by another name, and traditionally we thought of data and analytics of being with other departments, but HR departments have been doing data and analytics in different ways, maybe not in a digitized fashion, but certainly in different ways throughout the years. So, all of these roles and functions that you must take on, what would be your advice now to the HR professional or the head of an HR department to ensure that they're truly able to be seen as a strategic partner and still realize all the goals that they need to realize in this particular department? Joan.
All right. So the first thing that I would say is begin with the end in mind, because these services that we provide, they're not a means, an end unto themselves, but rather a means unto the end. And again, it starts with the business strategy. So the first thing I would say is ensure that you thoroughly understand the business strategy. Having done that, then develop an aligned HR strategy. Ask yourself, what does the HR function need to do to drive this overall business strategy? One of the ways in which you can drive it is how you utilize data analytics. And we have to push for efficiency. We have to be current. We have to utilize the available technology, again, not as an end unto itself, but as a means to give the business the information that it needs in order to advance, to be able to deploy technology and our people effectively and efficiently in service of that overarching business strategy. And it's a key point that you alluded to and that Nicholas expanded on in terms of HR's role, because we serve the business, and it's not or, it's and we serve the employees. And everybody, both the business leaders and the individual line staff, tune into a station called WIIFM. What's in it for me? And so we as HR practitioners need to be able to translate the strategy for the business people and for the employees themselves, so that they see it's not an adversarial arrangement, but that the pursuit of this strategy is done in a way that can serve the best interests of both, and the how we do it in terms of whether we're using data analytics, how are we coming up with evidence to drive and support decision making. That's for us to figure out how we do it in a way that adds value to both sets of interests.
Love it. We FM, WIIFM. What's in it for me? Joan Underwood, president of HRMAB, joined today by Nicholas Roberts, who is vice president. Thank you so much for your time. Have a productive day.
Same to you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Morning, morning, morning.